start with some of the local North Carolina folks, and then we can take some national questions after that. Do we have a microphone back there?
Hey, Vice President.
I can't see you.
Over here.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for taking questions from us, and thank you for visiting Concord. You referenced the awful death of Irina Zarutska. I'm just curious, have you had the chance to watch that awful video that was released by Katz, and what your thoughts are after viewing it?
Well, yeah, I've honestly seen a lot of gruesome footage, some involving my friends over the last couple of weeks. But the footage of Irina getting stabbed to death is very hard to watch. And I have not seen the whole video from start to finish. I had to cover my eyes for part of it because it is so gruesome. And maybe I should just stare at it. Maybe all of us should stare at it to know the kind of evil that we're actually confronting. Because what happened to her was really, really disgusting. And I think it comes from a deep and dark and evil place that exists. Thankfully, in a very few number of people, but those people we ought to lock up in prison so they can't get anybody else. But when I saw that video, you know what really got me as a father? I've got 3 little kids, 2 boys, and my youngest is a baby girl. She's 3 years old. She is the apple of my eye, as you dads will know. Daughters just have an effect on us. They get away with more stuff. They don't they? It's kind of annoying, actually. She gets away with things she should not get away with, that her brothers would never get away with. But I look at this girl who's 22 years old, and I think to myself, I would love for my daughter to have the kind of life where she never has to worry about that. And there's this moment where she looks up at her attacker and she covers her mouth, and you realize what's going through her head. She knows that something very terrible has happened to her, and I hope that she didn't realize it for too long, because that is unimaginable suffering. But if you're a man, I don't care what skin color you are, I don't care whether you're rich or poor, but if you're a man and you see the pleading eyes of a girl looking up for protection, then we have to protect our girls and our women in this country. And that was my reaction to it. That was my thought when I watched it. Now, young man, this is a very earnest young man. He doesn't look like a journalist to me, but go ahead and shout out a question, because I'm not going to deny that level of energy and that level of passion. First of all, what's your name?
Henry.
Henry. It's good to meet you, Henry. Ask your question, please.
I skipped school today. I was wondering if I could get a picture of you.
Henry said, I skipped school. Can I have a picture with you? Well, I guess I'm going to have some excuse to skip school, so I might as well get a photo with Henry. Now the next reporter is going to be, hey, I'm from CNN. Can I get a photo with you too? I wish that I got questions that easy. I'm not holding out hope. Sir. Can we get you a microphone? I can't hear you, sir.
Gotcha. I'm Jordan Green with Raw Story. President Trump and other speakers here have blamed former Governor Cooper and the mayor of Charlotte for Irina Zarutska's death. Do you also hold the North Carolina General Assembly responsible, who set the laws governing pretrial release that may have affected this crime?
Well, look, I think every politician who didn't work hard to keep violent criminals behind bars deserves to have some of the blame. But at the very top of that list is Governor Cooper. Because at the time that we were pushing these soft-on-crime policies, Governor Cooper was the man in charge. Now, I know we've got some great North Carolina legislators, and I might call them out if they're here. Do we have a North Carolina House Speaker, Destin Hall? Where's Destin at? Destin, thank you, man. We have Phil Berger here. Phil, thank you so much. Senate President Pro Tem. We've got County Sheriff Van Shaw. Where's County Sheriff Van Shaw? Thank you, sir. We've got Cabarrus County DA Ashley Shanley. Is it Shanley? I got that right? Okay. Of course, we got North Carolina GOP Chairman Jason Simmons. Jason Simmons that's a celebrity in the Trump White House there. North Carolina Labor Commissioner Luke Farley. Luke, where are you? Luke, thank you. And I know that our great North Carolina local legislators here have worked very hard to solve some of these soft on crime policies and make it harder to let violent criminals out so easily, and to demand that when you have a violent criminal who goes in, the person stays there and doesn't get a slap on the wrist and released to commit more crime in the community. That's what we want. We don't want a criminal justice system that goes after innocent people. We also don't want a criminal justice system that lets obviously violent felons out of prison without any real consequences. It's just very simple. And again, I go back to the statistic where we've got such a small number of people who commit so much of the violent crime. If we just locked them up, and I mean, look, I believe in repentance and I believe in forgiveness, but I believe that forgiveness often only comes on the other side of real punishment and real regret, which is why we got to lock some of these guys up in the first place. So yeah, I blame the political leadership, and I can't get over a governor who pursued soft on crime policies, Roy Cooper, who pursued soft on crime policies, who let violent criminals out of prison, and then after Irina was murdered, to have the audacity to blame our law enforcement. Law enforcement arrested this guy 14 times. They did their job. It's time for the politicians to do their job too. Next question.
Vice President Vance, thank you so much for taking questions. I'm Casey Jones from WCCB Charlotte. When it comes to cracking down on crime in cities like DC, Memphis, Chicago, sending the National Guard, what specific metrics does the administration use to decide where those resources go? And can we expect that kind of response here in Charlotte anytime soon?
Well, look, if the mayor of Charlotte and the governor of North Carolina asked for our help, we would absolutely send it, because we believe in helping people regardless of whether they're Democrats or Republicans. We would love to have the mayor of Charlotte reach out for our help, and you asked what the metrics are. That's one of the most important metrics. We want to go where we can have a real partnership between local law enforcement and the federal officials so that we can root out the crime. And that goes to the second metric. What is the most important thing? You can tell how many people are being murdered in a community. You can tell how many carjackings there are. You can tell how many armed robberies there are. There's way too much violent crime happening in our country. And when we look at an American community, again, we don't care about their politics. When we look at an American community where people are suffering because of violent crime, our response is, we want to help, just let us. And I'd encourage everybody to talk to your local officials. I know we're a little far away from Charlotte, but to talk to your local officials and encourage them to ask for the help of the Trump administration. We are willing to provide it. We want fewer people to be affected by violent crime, but these guys have actually got to play a partnership role with us. And unfortunately, way too many of them. Some of these people, it's crazy. They are ruling over cities that have violent crime rates that are worse than Mogadishu, and they say, no, we don't want Donald Trump to come in. Well, excuse me, if you don't need the federal help, then why is your murder rate so terrible in the first place? You do need the help, you just need to admit it. Next question.
Vice President, Michael Warwick, I'm with WBTV. Welcome to Race and Country, first of all. Irina's law was just passed by Republican lawmakers. It's now on Governor Stein's desk. It addresses cashless bail. It would allow magistrates to involuntarily commit people who they believe to be sick. However, opponents of that bill don't think it goes far enough for the mental health side of things. It also opens the door to the death penalty, which I know some opponents are against. Why would you encourage the governor, politics aside, to sign that bill?
Well, because I want to keep violent criminals off the street, and I want Americans to be safer. And this bill does it. Irina's law does it. Congratulations to the Senate President and House Speaker for getting it over the finish line. The governor's got to sign it. I guarantee if this bill is signed into law, it will help our incredible law enforcement keep the streets safe. And that's ultimately all I really care about. Again, it breaks my heart to think that you have young kids, especially in poor communities, whether they're black or white, who don't feel like they can walk outside. You've got grandmothers who are taking care of grandkids who don't want to sit out on their front porch because they're worried about drive-by shootings. That should break everybody's heart, and the way to solve the problem is to empower these cops to go after the bad guys and to do it with their full skill and their full force. Now, I don't know, have I read every detail of the law? I know some of the things that it does. I know that it ends cashless bail, which would be huge for the people in North Carolina. I know it makes it harder for some of these local magistrates to let people out with a slap on the wrist. That would be huge for the people of North Carolina. But could there be more? There could always be more. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This bill is going to make North Carolinians safer. They ought to sign it.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. It's Kit Maher representing the White House TV pool today. I just have two national questions for you, if you'll allow it.
Go ahead. Number
one, on Ukraine, President Trump said that Ukraine can fight and win back its territory. Could you explain the shifting stance there from stopping the bloodshed immediately, ending the war, and now saying that Ukraine should fight? Is that a tactic to pressure Putin back to the table?
We'll go ahead and do the second question.
Yeah, second question. Last year, when I was covering you on the campaign trail, you told Joe Rogan that the difference between Harris and Trump is that Trump is not trying to censor his fellow Americans. Wondering if you can square your fervent belief in free speech with what's going on now with Jimmy Kimmel and the FCC pressure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of those.
Well, look, on the free speech conversation, I'm pretty sure that Jimmy Kimmel was back on the air last night. And to the extent that he's not back on the air, it's because he's not funny and has terrible ratings. This is not a federal government problem. This is... And Kid, I want to answer your question in good faith. What people will say is, well, didn't the FCC commissioner put a tweet out that said something bad? Well, Kid, compare that, the FCC commissioner making a joke on social media. What is the government action that the Trump administration has engaged in to kick Jimmy Kimmel or anybody else off the air? Zero. What government pressure have we brought to bear to tell people that they're not allowed to speak their mind? Zero. We believe in free speech in the Trump administration. We are fighting every single day to protect it. Now compare that to the Biden administration, where we found out just yesterday that conservatives on YouTube and on a number of social media platforms were being censored. Why? Because the Biden administration picked up the phone and said, we want you to censor our political opponents. That is real government censorship, and it left the White House when Joe Biden left the White House. Now to Ukraine. Look, I've answered a version of this question probably 100 times over the past 3 months. And one of the things I'll say about the president is that he is responsive to the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is that, number one, we have engaged in incredibly good faith negotiations with both the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I believe the president is growing incredibly impatient with the Russians right now because he doesn't feel like they're putting enough on the table to end the war. That's number one. Number two, the president has grown very confident that this war is bad for Russia. You hear me say this all the time. You hear the president say this all the time. The war is bad for Russia. It's bad for Ukraine. It's bad for America. We want the killing to stop. That remains the president's position. But the president also can look at reality on the ground. He sees the economic numbers that are coming out of Eastern Europe. He sees the number of dead people, both Russians and Ukrainians, that are happening in that war. And the president is telling Vladimir Putin it is time to stop the killing. He would say that to Zelensky. In fact, has said that to Zelensky. He wants this war to end, and he's doing everything that he can to stop it. But look, if the Russians refuse to negotiate in good faith, I think it's going to be very, very bad for their country. That's what the president made clear. It's not a shift in position. It's an acknowledgement of the reality on the ground. We're going to keep on fighting for peace every single day in the Trump administration.